Welcome back to your channel. My name is Brad, and today we're going to talk about BCAT. I personally like BCAT. Now there's also ECAT, and they hold a slightly different portfolio, but I'm not a ESG person, so I am not going to talk about ECAT in this episode. But you can feel free to go out and look at ECAT, and it can be another great added to your portfolio if you like it. I personally will stay away from ESG, and that is just my personal opinion. So let's talk about price appreciation. So BlackRock, having trillions of dollars in their bank account, has come out with a discount management program. Covers a lot of funds. So what does this mean? It means if the price is below the NAV by 7.5%, they're going to purchase back 2.5% of all the outstanding shares at 98% of NAV. This is a significant move to raise the price. I mean, that's, again, somebody with trillions of dollars, and they can afford to do that. If any time during these time periods, from now to Christmas, if the average is below 7.5, they'll repurchase shares. And when they repurchase shares, the price will go up. It's just a natural occurrence. It also forces us to be closer to the actual NAV. One thing you should realize about this fund is this fund will not be around forever. If you don't know, BCAT and ECAT will cease to exist in 2032. They will just magically, poof, disappear. Now, they will pay you as the share owner the NAV. That's right. So you're buying it at 5% right now, 4.5% discount, and in 2032, whatever the NAV is at that time period, the fund will cease to exist and they will pay you back out at NAV. The question of it is will the NAV stay consistent? Will the NAV go up? Will the NAV go down? You guess. Go to the casino, roll the dice. Who knows? But in between now and then, they're paying 20%. And that's a good question. How can they pay 20%? Well, two articles linked below. And the one article written by Nick looks at how much money they made in the first half of the year. Well, come to find out, they made enough money in the first half of the year to go ahead and pay us to the complete distributions for the entire year. What? That's right. They made enough money in the first 6 months of the year to pay 20% distributions for the entire year. It's in their financials. There's also a second article, and he confirms the exact same thing. So what's going on there? These guys are making money, and they're just giving it back to you. They're going to be more of a broke even than something that's going to appreciate strongly over time. And I am totally okay with breaking even. If you ever thought you were going to get away from cover calls, and Brad was never going to talk about cover calls, well, guess what? BCAT writes cover calls. Unfortunately. No, actually, fortunately, because that's how they're gaining some of their revenue, is through cover calls. Now, what was interesting, and this is just Brad being tin hat guy again. Earlier in the year, they were only overwritten by 9%, 10, getting close to 10, but 9%. So 9% of their holdings had cover calls on them. Magically today, it's 22%. So why does the fund manager think that things are turning bearish? Interesting conversation. because BlackRock will know things well before you and I will ever know. But they are turning a little more bearish than they were at the beginning of the year. But that's how they're making some of the revenue. The other part of the revenue is they actually hold bonds, treasuries. They actually have a loaning system that they loan to different companies. And that's, again, very interesting. They have technologies and all the rest of them and a little bit of utilities. Very diversified. You can see that a majority of the portfolio is secured loans. So in a secured loan, it's backed by something. So even if somebody doesn't pay that loan, they're going to get their money back. The recovery of those loans are very high. It's the ones that it's the loans of the non-rated. If the non-rated are non-secured, they're going to get great payments. But how many of those are in default? That information we don't have. At least it's not easily accessible. Because their loans are AAA to non-rated and everywhere in between. And they have a effective duration of about 2.24 years. So if you know anything about how this breaks down, when we have rate cuts, and they will continue to do rate cuts, you're going to see appreciation in some of this. Not the entire portfolio, some of this. So you should see some price appreciation or a consistent NAV, which I'm okay with. It also points out that 21.1% overrate on this sheet. So that's interesting. Now, one thing that I'll point out is when you get below triple Bs, so you have B and non-rated, they're going to paying a very high percentage for those loans. And that comes out of the CLO book that's sitting behind me. Anytime you get below the triple Bs, you're going to be paying higher rates. It's just the way that it works in this world. Another one is they don't use any leverage. If they were leveraged, I would be a little more concerned. But with no leverage, I'm not concerned. And BlackRock has their fingers so deep that they can get into things that other people will not be able to get into. And it's, again, just an interesting process. Now, me personally, I got a few shares, but nothing to write home about. Because I'm still a little concerned. Is that 20% going to last long term? Now, I think this year we're covered. Next year, who knows? I'm not the fund manager. I'm not on the board of directors. I have no clue what they'll do. But if they continue to make profits, they're going to pay them out to you. That's the question. Again, Nick's article, you can go look at their exact financials and see if they're profitable. They're very transparent about it. It's BlackRock. I'm not going to sit here and do financial analysis on their stuff because Nick has already done it for us. They seem to be profitable. They pay you 20%. Somebody's going to ask about taxes. Here's last year's taxes. They had some return of capital, but they're not completely efficient. Now, according to their website, this year should be 95% return of capital. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't sit on their board. I'm not their accountant. They don't know how much return of capital will be until the end of the year. So don't go on any recommendations. It's not going to be all return of capital. It could be, though. Go to the casino, roll the dice, because You don't know, I don't know, we don't have insider information. We can look at the history, and history tells us that last year was like 63%. So take it as a grain of salt. If I look at price, if I look at total returns, and this is something that if you looked at total returns of BCAT since its inception, it's done okay. In the last year, they're right there with the market. So you look at that going, interesting. And if I look at price return, they're up almost 15%. So I like something that rises in price ever so slightly, because if there's a downturn, 15, 20% correction, I'm right back down to zero. So I really didn't go anywhere in the last year. And I'm still getting that 20%. And they're still writing the cover calls. And they're going to go up in price because of the bonds. So there's a lot of ands and positive about the fund. Why don't I just take a larger position? I don't know. Be honest with you. If I jumped in with all feet, who knows? But I will say it does hold a little alternative in my portfolio. And there's going to be people that say, hey, BCAT is 100% of my portfolio. I'm going to say it's more like 1% of my income portfolio. So not big enough to worry about, and I can sleep at night. I'm hoping with the rate cuts, and this is what I'm monitoring, as the rate cuts continue to go forward, do they continue to pay the 20%? Now, after the first of the year, and they declare distributions again, and it's still at 20%, well, maybe I'll take a little larger position at that time. But until that happens, I don't think jumping into BCAT is really a long-term game. Now, if you were watching it and knew that BlackRock announced all this stuff back in March of last year, hindsight being 2020, maybe that was a good time to buy, because historically they traded at 15% below NAV, and you knew that they were going to buy back at 7.5. So you literally saw the price increase as soon as they made that announcement. The price went up. So that really gets you into how much farther will the price drop compared to rise. And it's worth having a 20% payer in your portfolio, even if it's only for a short time period until they make the next call. And even if they drop it to 10%, but we have price appreciation, I'm still pulling my 8 and I'm just fine. But I look at this more of a calculated risk. I'd be interested in your comments. I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, this is the best fund ever. I think it's a good fund. I think it's worth a few dollars in my portfolio to get that 20%, even if it is for the next 6 months. Now, one thing that I'll also tell you is I also put a stop loss. And that is just in case things turn south, I'll get stopped out. But I'm going to get stopped out in profit. So I'll collect my 20%. And if things turn south, I still end up in profit. That's how I look at this one. I don't want to say, hey, this is just going to continue to rise. But maybe if I get stopped out, I'll wait a month or two, see if conditions change, and be able to buy in at a lower price. It's just something that you have to do with risk management. Don't think some of this stuff isn't risky and things will always be rosy. So set some stop losses. If you buy in and you get enough income, you can lower that stop loss if you choose. I'm not telling you what to do, but if you're collecting 20% and you're happy after, several payments of your winnings, because it is like winnings, rolling the dice at the casino, you can drop your stop loss a few cents to make sure that you still end up in profit. Just a different way of managing risk. It's worked out for me well. I got stopped out the other day, but I was still in profits. And that's what somebody doesn't understand. If I'm still in profits, I'm still collecting my payments, and I get stopped out in profits, no harm, no foul. Personal opinion. Now, will I be setting stop losses on everything? No, not at all. Not even close. But I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about some of this stuff, and do I set a stop loss on some of the cover calls? And probably not. But at the same time, if I get stopped out, I can always buy back in later at a lower price. And that's the beauty of it. I can actually increase my share counts in something I do like. So it's a good practice that's out there, and it is something that you have to manage. Until next time, God bless.